Hello and welcome to episode 44 of Tea and Possibilities. I'm Nikki and this is a podcast all about knitting, crochet and making all the things here in East London. You can find me on Instagram at hippie_Nikki. I'm Nikki Hippie on Ravelry, and if you search for Tea and Possibilities under the groups tab on Ravelry, you will find our group right there. I will post quick links to everything I mention in the description box below, but if you would like to see the full show notes, you can have a look on my blog and the link to that will be down there as well. As always, I would like to say a massive thank you to any new viewers. I really appreciate you giving the podcast a shot. And a massive welcome back to my returning viewers. I really appreciate you coming back every episode. Today's tea is I was about to say Yorkshire Gold, which is our standard kind of builder's tea, as we call it, but actually they didn't have any Yorkshire Gold last time we went shopping, so we're currently working our way through a box of PG Tips. So it's very dark, it's very strong, and there's no sugar in it. Now today's setup definitely looks a little bit different. Usually I have my books behind me and it all just looks a little bit different, but we are in a little bit of upheaval at the moment. We are in the process of trying to, I don't want to say decorate the flat because we've decided not to paint or do anything like that to it as we are only renting, but we are in the process of trying to invest in things that will make the space more workable for us. So at the moment I am sitting on the sofa that came with the flat because the council are unable to pick this up until the end of the month, and our new sofa is over there where the sofa usually is. The bookcase that I usually sit in front of is just here, so there's no real space because we also picked up our dining table, which you can see in the background, and I used to sit at the dining table when I started the podcast back in Portsmouth in 2016. So yeah, it's kind of all change at the moment. Once this goes, we will set up the dining table properly and I'll be able to sew there. But yeah, we're in the process of kind of finding storage solutions for various places around the flat. I have organised all my stash. I've made a video about it, so I'm in the process of like completing that organisation before I edit it together and share it with you, because our new sofa is much bigger, so my stash corner has been eaten up by sofa. But yeah, hopefully we will be back to my usual busy bee book background next episode, but we will see. It all depends whether I film before this one gets picked up by the council or not, and who knows. One more thing before we launch into the podcast proper, I just wanted to remind you about the ReKnit KAL. The ReKnit KAL kicked off on the 17th of March and it'll be running till the 18th of May, so we're like coming up to about midway through the KAL, and you basically reknit something you've knit before. So if there's a pattern that you really love, you'd like to knit again, go ahead, now is your opportunity. This is fine for something you've knit once before, 5 times before, whatever. You can also modify it, so if you've learned something from the last time you knit it, you know, we want to hear about it. The chatter thread is really fun to dip in and out of. It's really great seeing everyone's progress, and yeah, I will be opening up around the beginning of May. I'll be opening up kind of the draw prize thread, so I'll let you know about that nearer the time. I do have prizes. When I was sorting through my stash, I found a load of prizes and things, so I've got a special stash drawer in my storage stash drawer. I've got a special prize drawer in my stash storage now, so I'll pull some things out of there. But again, everything, it kind of feels like we've just moved in again because everything is just a little bit difficult to get to, so bear with me. But yeah, there will be links below to everything you need to know for the ReKnit KAL, so if you have any questions or would like to see the rules in full, please click just below. But now let's move on to Whipped Up. So I went on Ravelry the other day and I counted my whips, and I have 8 whips. Now that's quite a lot for me because when I started, I for the longest time was a monogamous knitter or crocheter. Whatever the project was, I just worked on that project. I didn't fuss about with any extra projects. I didn't have 10 on the go or anything like that. So to have 8 is quite a lot. I decided that actually I only have 6 because 2 of those 8 are blanket projects. So I'm still working on my Cozy Memories and I'm still working on my Granny Stripe, although those haven't been touched in a few weeks, so they're kind of in hiatus. But they're blanket projects, they're very big projects, so I'm not in any great rush to finish them. I don't want to be working on them monogamously, which is the only way they're ever going to get finished in a quick amount of time. I'm happy just to pick them up whenever the mood takes me. So I'm gonna discount those as active whips. But I do have a lot of things on the needles. I have 2 sweaters. I haven't touched the pavement in ages. I haven't touched the Kerry Town since doing like the first, couple of rows of the cable pattern. I really need to get my pavement finished because it's getting a bit silly now. I also have my Selby mittens, which I fell in love with again once I started using my Lika needles, and then got sidetracked and distracted by other projects, and I've got a couple of other things. I'm looking at my Ravelry page now and almost all of the top 2 lines are whips, which is nothing compared to some people's whip count, but for me that's a little bit too much, so I need to whip down. Is that what I want to say? I need to reduce my number of whips. So that's going to be my kind of project for this month. Because ultimately I'll get more done if I have less whips. All that to say, I only have 3 projects to show you this week. First up is my second Hats for the Homeless hat. There we go. I haven't done much on it at all, as you can see. This is the Smart Hat by Silja Divine, and I'm using Willow Lark in the woodland base in the army green colourway. And this was a handbag project. You may remember last episode I said I cast it on while I was at a beer pong tournament. I promptly had to rip it out. So yeah, that was a bit of, it would have been longer if I hadn't had to rip it out. But yeah, it's basically just a full ribbed hat and that's all there is to it. And it's been living in my handbag. However, it has been replaced. We will come back to my current big handbag project later. But yeah, that's just something that I'm kind of knitting on when I need something a bit mindless. Although sometimes I find that I can't count to 4 because I actually took this to work on when I went to see Tomb Raider last Saturday, and I got it home and I had to rip back again because about halfway through the film there was obviously a very tense moment and my stitch count just shifted over 1. So I could have left it, but I ripped it back, so it was about here, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, I've just been kind of working on that as and when. There's not really much else to say about that. Again, I really do like the woodland. It's knitting up now. I have more fabric, and also the brim will fold like that, and it's a lovely squishy texture. But yeah, it's just a bit too hairy for me, so I don't think woodland would ever make a good garment for me. Next up, living in my little grey girl bag, is my ReKnit KAL project. Just look at that pink. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, it's just like sweets. I love it. This is on an incredibly short cable, really. I mean, it's not short cable, but it's short for the project, so it's going to be quite tricky to show you. I do intend to pop to Wild and Willy and pick up some new tips and some new cables so I can have a little bit more variety in my, my knitting needle collection. But here we go. I'm just trying to pull it out a little bit more. It is my Stranded Affection. This is the colour Affection by Vera Valimaki, and I am using 3 different shades of Stranded Dyeworks in the Oasis base. I always want to say the Oasis basis, which is silly, but it's the Oasis base. This here, the first wedge, is done in Naive Watercolour. The first stripes, which I have finished now, is First Frost. And I've started striping in the Pinata, which is this amazing pink. As you can see, I haven't done very much of it. I'm going to hold them all up together in the balls so you can see. There you go. So those are my 3 colours. So I've got Naive Watercolour, which is the blue, First Frost, which is the grey, and the bright pink, which is Pinata. And yeah, I kind of blazed through this. I, got the striping section done really quickly. I immediately started the pink section and lost steam. I think because I'd been working on this pretty much monogamously, it was my carry-around project for a while, I wasn't even working on my hat. I just overdid it a little bit. It's like that time when I had like avocado on toast for breakfast and lunch for about 3 weeks, every day for 3 weeks. And now I can't look at an avocado again. As I'm looking at this, I know I will be working on this again. But yeah, just it's not where my brain's at the moment. I definitely want to get this finished soon, purely because, you know, it's so close to being done. If I just get this, the third stripy section finished, then I've got the big pink like border, and then it's done. So I'm probably over halfway. So I do need to pick this up and get a little bit monogamous with it. So yeah, I'll probably work on this week, because as I'm looking at it, I'm just like, wow, I love this so much. I'm so glad that I went out of my comfort zone and I got that pink, because what I really like, you can probably see it better in the ball. So it's almost a pastel-y pink. It's much paler pink, baby pink maybe. It's a paler pink base, and then it's got all these shots of like bright neon pink, orange, yellow, purple. So when you knit it up, it's not just a pink stripe. You get these fantastic pops of colour, which I think are a lot more subtle in the Naive watercolour, and they just look fantastic here. And I just think when this is all like bundled up around my neck, that little pink pop, particularly on the border where you'll be able to see the pink in all its glory, it's just going to be gorgeous, and I can't wait. So yeah, I'm thinking I need to go a little bit monogamous. I can't just do one project, because I do get a little bit bored nowadays. So I'm thinking maybe the Colour Affection and my Pavement, maybe I need to dedicate myself to those for a couple of weeks to try and get, you know, I mean, I'm on the hemline shaping for the Pavement. Once that's done, I've only got to do the sleeves. So I could get that finished in a couple of weeks. I could get this finished in a couple of weeks. And then I'd have fewer whips, and then I could deal with a few more, because I really do need to cast something new on for a gift for a friend. I've got some time yet, so I kind of do want to clear the needles a little bit. But yeah, I do need to get that cast on pretty soon, so wish me luck. After all that preamble, you're probably thinking, okay, so which of her other current whips is she going to pull out as her third project that she's been working on? But no, it's actually a new cast on. To be completely accurate, it's a hoe! I have never in all my life had a hoe. Well, that's not entirely accurate. This is technically not the first sock I have ever knit, because yes, this is a sock. Way back when, I think what started off my knitting again was having a go at knitting socks. I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores of why I wanted to share that, because I am actually working on a video all about socks, because they've been my nemesis. If you've been watching for a while, you'll know that I've been like, keep getting all this sock yarn, can't knit socks, they just don't work. I've tried a couple of times on the podcast, and I've got to maybe here, I've done maybe a bit of a heel, and it's just not clicked for me. So this is technically not my first sock. I'd knit them on DPNs in the DK weight. Never really liked the fit, you know, and I never managed to do what I would call a proper sock. So I've never used sock yarn, I've never used small size needles, I've never had a good fit. I'm going to tick all the boxes with this one. So this is West Yorkshire Spinners, which I have to try very hard to enunciate. West Yorkshire Spinners. And this is in one of their Country Bird colourways. This is Blue Tit, and I love it, and I think I want to get some more. I wear a kingfisher necklace, so I'm thinking I might have to get the kingfisher. I do like the wood pigeon as well, and the pheasant. They're all lovely. Maybe I'll just knit my way through the collection. But I digress. There's no pattern, because a lovely viewer pointed me towards a sock knitting series. It was Meg. I really thank you for this, because look. And she told me that Meanwhile at the Castle, which is a podcast, were doing a sock series. And what they were doing, I'm just flapping this around, sorry. What they were doing was they're two sisters. One was knitting a sock on DPNs and one on Magic Loop, and they were each doing a video, a live video no less, where they were showing each stage. So cast on, heel, flap and gusset, how to do the toe, Kitchener, all of that. And they also had a really good formula for figuring out to get your socks to fit. So I massively recommend that. I will link to the first video down below, and from there you'll be able to find all of the others. But I literally just followed that video. So I did the cast on, I did all the formula stuff last, I don't know, Thursday-ish. I kind of wrote it all down. And then on Sunday, I was very lazy and I stayed in bed all morning because I had the house to myself, and I watched Captain America Civil War and I cast on. And by the end I had, you know, my ribbing done, I had a little bit of leg, and I just kind of, you know, worked away at that. And then we had a long drive on Tuesday going down to Portsmouth to pick up our dining table, and I got all of the leg done. And then I sat and I watched the video about the heel flap, how to do the heel turn, the gusset, knit on the foot for a couple of days, and then yesterday I did the toe, and this morning I I finished it with Kitchener stitch. So I started on Sunday, today is Friday, and I finished it this morning. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's 6 days for one sock, considering, and it looks really funny, doesn't it? Because I don't have a sock blocker. And it is a bit lumpy, you know, there are places where I've kind of, you know, not done, you know, my SSK gusset decreases were not quite as neat as they could have been. I know I've dropped a stitch just here that I've only just noticed, which you won't notice because it's in this darker stripe. You know, and where I've kind of zipped through it fairly quickly, it's not quite as neat as it could be. And I still have ends to weave in, as you can see. But I'm so proud I've knit a sock and it fits, it fits. I knit this on a 2.75mm needle. I don't like magic looping. I've got hair in it. I'm shedding like a golden retriever because it's spring, so there's hair everywhere. What was I saying? Yes. It's actually Friday today, and I don't normally podcast on a Friday, so I don't know quite what's going on really. Bear with. Has anyone seen that show, Miranda? I love that show. Bear with. Yes, so I don't like to knit magic loop on an interchangeable. I don't know why, that's just my personal preference, and the only kind of appropriate sized fixed circular I had was a 2.75. I tried to order a 2.5mm needle, literally everywhere was out of stock, everywhere. Couldn't find one in stock anywhere. So I went and had a whinge on Instagram stories, and everyone was like, they're in stock now, because I'd had a whinge like a day or so later when it popped into my head how annoying that was. And obviously by that point it all come in stock. The lovely Anna of Wild and Woolly has got some on order for me, so I'll be picking those up soon. So I knit this on a 2.75 and it fits my foot perfectly, by which I mean there is like almost, there is a tiny bit of negative ease, but there is almost none, it's so minimal. So my plan is to go use the exact same stitch count, but to go down to a 2.5 and see if that will make my next pair of socks a little bit more, you know, that's technical, fitted, that's the word I'm looking for. These will just be, like I say, there's a few drop stitches in them, so they're probably not going to wear as well as they could. So I am going to just keep these for kind of around the house socks or bed socks when it gets chilly again, which is probably going to be next week because what is going on with the weather at the moment. But yeah, unless you can't tell, I am so proud of myself. This was something I never thought that I would be able to do, and here it is. I actually picked up this yarn, I've got loads left as well. Look how much I've got left. So yeah, that's definitely going to make a square and a stripe in my blankets. But I picked this up in January when I went to Wild and Woolly with Katie and Amy. So this hasn't actually been in stash for too long, which is really good. When I was going through my stash this week, I realised how much I have. I have said before that I have a tiny but mighty stash, and compared to some people, I do have quite a small stash. However, it's not quite as small as I thought, and it has overflowed my stash solution by just a little bit. The majority of it is sock yarn that I've picked up here and there on the wild, hopeful off chance that I would one day knit socks, which I am now doing. So my plan is to knit through my commercial sock yarn first, because I've got maybe 10 skeins of it, and use those skeins to perfect my like perfect sock recipe and one for Rich, because he's very keen to have his own pair of hand knit socks. And then thereafter I will be happy to crack into the good skeins. I mean, I didn't really want to use this because I really love it. I think the way it knits up is really beautiful. And I kind of felt like using it on a first sock would be a waste, and that maybe I should use some that I didn't like as much. But actually, working with a yarn that I really loved was a great idea, particularly this one because it's stripy, and I know what you guys mean now about the striping. It is amazing. You literally zip through and you're like, oh, let's do to the end of this stripe. The next stripe's really thin, so I'll just do that. Oh, I'm on another stripe now, might as well do that. So they go like crazy. They go like the clappers. It's amazing. So yeah, I really recommend not saving the good stuff until you're good at something. I'm going to work my way through the commercial stuff, just because these are experiments and I'm still trying to figure out my perfect sock recipe for myself, because this is very close to perfect, but it's not quite there yet. And if I use all that commercial sock yarn, that is a good bit of space made in my stash, and then I can start working through the more indie dyed stuff. And then I'm thinking, dependent on the indie dyed, because if it's like super highly variegated or speckled, I'm probably not going to want to try a pattern, but I do want to try a pattern. So I'm keen to like try some cable socks. I've seen some, I think I've got quite a few queued actually. So once I've got my vanilla down, I'm coming for every other flavour. So yeah, as you can tell, I am really, really happy with what I've managed this week, even though for the past 6 days I've basically only been working on a sock. And I do intend to only work on a sock today because I need to get that second one cast on ASAP while I'm still high on the hoe magic. Is that what I mean? You know what I mean, right? I need to ride that kind of high so that I can get the pair. And then I'm going to start working on my whip count, and I'm going to get it down, I'm going to get things finished. I am going to have lots to show for it, because literally I have one finished object this year, which is terrible. And it's not like I haven't been knitting, I've been knitting a lot, I just have been casting things on and working on big projects instead of finishing things. So I feel a finishing kick coming on. Okay, well that's it for Whipped Up this week, so let's move on to Knit and Natter. It's a bit of a short one this week, partly because it's a Friday, and I usually stay up on a Friday night and do a lot of knitting, so there's a little bit more content for you when I film on a Saturday or Sunday. But this weekend is going to be kind of crazy. I'm staying at my mum's tonight because I teach on a Saturday morning. I help kids out with their English homework and stuff like that on a Saturday morning. And because that's quite near my mum's, I stay there on a Friday night. So I've got to go there, do my teaching tomorrow, and then I've got a few hours before I'm going out for a birthday party. Yeah, and you can see how the weekend very quickly fills up. So I'm getting my filming in nice and early. And yeah, I've been having a great week. So yeah, that's why it's a little bit on the short side this week. I hope you don't mind, I hope that's fine. I just knew that there was every likelihood if I left it to chance for the weekend, it might not happen. So here we are. But this week I wanted to talk to you about something that I did earlier in the week. Rich and I took a trip to the Tower of London. Now I went when I was about 14, I went with my mum. We had one summer holiday where we just did kind of all the sites around London. I went to a lot of museums with my granddad. He really liked going to them and I loved them, and we would go pretty much every half term, Easter, summer. We would go to, the Imperial War Museum. We did Churchill's Bunker. Is that what it's called? No, it's Churchill's War Room. We did Churchill's War Room. We'd done Natural History Museum, Science Museum, Victoria and Albert. And then one year my mum, who was obviously usually working, decided she was going to take some time off and we were going to do some sites. So we did all of that. And that was actually my first trip to the Tower of London. And I don't have a massive memory of it, and I must have been about 13 or 14. But I just remember having a really nice time with my mum and seeing the crown jewels. But I've never been back since. So that's like 16, 17 years ago now. And I am, for those of you who don't know, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but one of my great interests is history. I am a massive history buff. So I tend to go through phases with my reading where I'll read like a ton of fantasy and then a ton of like historical fiction, and then I'll go through, you know, a big chunk of wanting to only read non-fiction, and usually that non-fiction is historical. So I've read a lot about the Wars of the Roses and the Tudor courts, and quite a bit about the First and Second World Wars. Those are kind of my two big periods that I have a lot of interest in. And because of that, I'm kind of going through a history kick at the moment, and I said to Rich, you know, you've got a day off, let's go and have a look at the Tower of London, because we live in Tower Hamlets, which means that we get into the Tower of London for £1, which is a mega saving, considering I think it's like £30 to get in. So if you do live in Tower Hamlets, go to the Idea store and get yourself like the little local resident card, and you'll be able to get in for £1. It's amazing. Because it was so cheap, we decided just to go on Monday. We didn't have the whole day there because we had other things to do in the morning and in the afternoon. So, but because it was £1, it was like, well, we can go for a couple of hours, and, you know, if we don't see everything, it's fine. You know, we can go back another time. So we went and had a look around, and we saw the Mint, we saw the Menagerie, we saw the new, it's not new at all, I think it was put in 2006, this memorial to the people who had been executed there, but obviously we'd never seen it before, so it was new to us. We didn't queue up for the crown jewels because the queue was enormous, like, they're just, like, it's just a crown, guys, calm down. But yeah, we had a walk round, and we did, you know, we went into the Bloody Tower. And we just had a wander around, and you have that feeling of, I genuinely can't believe that, you know, this is so old. This is so old. You know, it's several hundred years old. It's like the oldest place in London, I think. And you're walking in places where these people that you've read about, you know, you learned about in school, that's where these people walked, you know. We went into the Bloody Tower and went on to Raleigh's Walk, which is where Sir Walter Raleigh, when he was imprisoned, used to take his exercise. And you could look over and see the view of current London. That's one of my favourite things about London, is how you can just come across these, you know, you'll be in somewhere like the Tower of London, and you'll be looking out and seeing, you know, the Shard and the Gherkin and all these incredibly modern buildings that have been there for all of 5 minutes compared to where you're standing. And I love that. I love how the modern pushes up against the old in London. It doesn't make for easy navigation around the city. You know, we have very higgledy-piggledy roads and things, but I love that about this place, I really do. And to see that was amazing. And I did share some pictures on my Instagram stories, which you'll find on my London highlight and on my Instagram grid as well if you wanted to have a look. But that kicked off a little bit of a spending spree on Kindle. I love my Kindle. I love having real books. However, I don't have the space to have real books, unfortunately. I'm also thinking of looking into Kindle Unlimited, because you get like a lot of free books that way as well, which is pretty cool. And I think my library has got like a lending to your Kindle thing. Side note. But I love my Kindle because it means I can just, you know, download things and they just sit there and they're with me, and no matter where I am, I can choose fiction, non-fiction. I can choose from my little portable bookshelf, which I really, really like. But yeah, I kind of feel like I want some non-fiction in my life. So I went in and I downloaded a couple of books about the princes in the Tower. That's one of the stories that I find most fascinating, because, you know, there's generally accepted that it was Richard III, but there are a lot of other theories, and I like the other theories. I like, you know, it's a mystery. At the end of the day, we don't know. However, you know, it's generally accepted that it was probably Richard III. There's, we don't know, and that's juicy and fascinating, and I love reading about all the kind of politics and the family politics that went around it, for all these other theories as well. So I downloaded a few of those. But because the next day we were travelling down to Portsmouth, I decided to download some podcasts. So whenever we go on a long drive, we usually download something from Stuff You Missed in History Class, or there's another one, there's like a science one we listen to. But this time, ologies. So I downloaded a couple of ology episodes, and I downloaded the first episode of a new Stephen Fry podcast. Can't remember what that one's called. I think it was called The Way We Were or something like that, but I will put a link down below. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to download something about the Princes in the Tower. Because I'm a massive nerd, and because Rich is not massively familiar with that period in history, and I was curious to see what his opinion would be once he knew all the theories. So I downloaded a couple of episodes, and the first one we listened to was not great, but the second one was from a podcast called Rex Factor. Now, I shared this on Instagram stories because I am super impressed with this podcast. Basically, the premise is that it is one episode per monarch of England. And it starts with Alfred the Great, and it goes all the way up to Elizabeth II, who's our current queen. And I thought that that was genius, and there are big gaps in my historical knowledge, and I thought what better way to fill them than by listening to this podcast. So I have gone all the way back to the beginning. What I like about it is it's quite chatty. They kind of top trumps score them a little bit, so there's like battliness, how well did they do in battle, dynasty, did they leave a secure dynasty, did they secure the succession, subjectivity, which they say is would you like to be their subject, and scandal. I think that's all of them. And then they kind of score them on those and then try to decide, do they have the Rex factor? And it's really fun. It's just two guys who've read up on these like monarchs, and they're just chatting about them, sharing the stories about them. And it's not dry at all. It's just really fun and really interesting. And you look back and you think these were such, pious and restrained times sometimes, and that we're so liberal now, and actually no. It's kind of crazy what went down back then, and I'm just really, as you can tell, I'm really enjoying it. I'm doing a lot of running at the moment, and that's my constant companion. So I'm about 4 episodes in, and I'm just downloading a few at a time and just catching up with my history while I go for a run, and it's just, I can't recommend it enough. I really love it. And it's for the same reason that I love Stuff You Missed in History Class. I don't listen to that on an episode by episode basis. I tend to flick through it and just choose things that sound interesting because it's fantastic. I really love history. I think that we learn such a narrow bit of history that it's amazing when you start digging deeper into things. For example, if you dig into the suffragette movement, you can find out about, the impact that women of colour and women of other classes had on the suffragette movement, which frankly is not something I was taught about when I was doing it at school. When I did it at GCSE level, I was taught about Emmeline Pankhurst, and who was awesome, but it was a very white middle class suffragette movement. And it wasn't until like the last few years when I realised that there was more to it than that, and there was more racial diversity, more class diversity to the movement than that, which is awesome. And what I love is that I am now responsible for myself. If I want to know something, it is totally up to me to go out and find out about it. All I have to do is Google, download a book, pick up a book from the library, watch a documentary. That's the fantastic thing about no longer being tied to a curriculum. I love it. It's just brilliant to be able to run around and read and learn about what I want to learn about. So yeah, I've been having a bit of a geeking out week. I pretty much watched everything that was under the history section on BBC iPlayer, and then a couple of days ago I checked in again and was like, yes, they've got new documentaries that I haven't seen yet. So I've started watching one about the Plantagenets, which I think I might have seen when it originally came out. I think it is been reposted, but it's one of my favourite periods in history. I love the Plantagenet dynasty. Oh, they were so infighty, and oh yeah, it's just juicy. It's really, really good. It's really fun. And you know, there's a reason that, you know, Shakespeare wrote plays about them, because they were really, really interesting, even if he might have, you know, gone along with too much propaganda. But side note. So yeah, that's it for this week. I hope I haven't geeked out too much over socks and history and and all that stuff. But if you are ever in London, I do recommend a trip to the Tower. Make a day of it. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm sure it is, you know, great fun to queue up and see the crown jewels. We just didn't have the time to do it. They are, you know, I was dismissive. They are very impressive. They really are, you know. It's just, I wasn't keen on the queue. But there's loads of great exhibits in there. It's pretty interactive for kids. It's quite large. It's much bigger than you think. And yeah, so I totally recommend that. Again, I also recommend the Rex Factor. I will probably be sharing on Instagram any good books that I come across in this vein, because I'm clearly on a little bit of a kick at the moment. And I'm sure when that's done, I will be going back to fantasy and historical fiction. But that's it for this episode. I will see you soon. I'm not sure when, and I'm not sure where. Maybe we'll still be on the old sofa. Maybe we'll be back in the usual place. Who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But until then, I hope you have a lovely, lovely week or 2 weeks or however long it is. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon for another cup of tea. Bye!